Huh?
It's coming.
All right. Okay. That happened for everybody.
Hello, good afternoon, good morning. Welcome to Match Day. I'm Vince Gansberg. This is with me is Ian Barker. And our special guest today is Bryan Turner. And I'm going to have Coach Barker introduce him and kind of talk about how they know each other. But I know Bryan is in Kansas City. Bryan just said, want to say thank you for taking the time to being on and looking forward to this webinar.
Yeah, no, thank you guys for inviting me.
No, it's good. Good. Your audio works. Good. I'm going to be monitoring the chat box. So if anybody has any questions, please feel free to ask those. And but Coach Barker, go ahead and we'll start the show.
Thanks, Vince. Thanks for joining us, Bryan. I appreciate it. Little fact that people don't know, Bryan and I have a cup of coffee and walk around the park every 2 weeks with his little blue book. But we'll get more into your story from your voice. But as a young coach here in Kansas City, you're off previous to COVID in our office a lot, convention, a lot of activity in our coaching community here in Kansas City. So do you want to give us a little bit of your story, soccer in high school, soccer in college, and then where you're at now?
Yeah, for sure. So I went to college for mechanical engineering. Before that, I played high school in New Jersey, or played high school there, and I played for a club there called the South Jersey Barons that's still around now, which is pretty cool to see. I decided from playing with them that I didn't want to play in college, and it was just because I was kind of burnt out from how much soccer was taking up my life as a youth. So I got to college, first semester, realized it was like the biggest mistake of my life. But at that point, you know, I went for engineering and I came out with a degree in mechanical engineering. So I took my first job out of college here in Kansas City at Honeywell, working for their FM&T plant. Learned a lot while I was there, but the main thing I realized was corporate America just really wasn't for me. I started coaching as an assistant coach while I was there. And like my first 2 weeks here, I researched all the high schools in Kansas City and emailed every coach asking if I could come on and be an assistant. And out of like the 20-something coaches, only 3 responded to me. 2 of them, one said no, that they didn't have room. 2 of them invited me to tryouts. They were the school I chose, St. Thomas Aquinas and Blue Valley North, actually, where I coach now. I went to both tryouts, chose Aquinas, and I was there for 6 years as an assistant. Coached club there for a while I was there. And it was a really good experience. I won a few state championships while there. And it was kind of as my coaching career developed that way, I realized that coaching was something more than just like I did for fun. You know, I would leave for work at 6 a.m. just so I could leave work early enough to make it to the last hour of my high school practice, then find something to eat in between high school and club practice, coach club, get home at 10 o'clock at night, wake up and do it all over again for 3 years. So it really took a toll on me, but in a good way, because I just realized like how much I loved it. And then as my engineering career was kind of coming to an end, the contract I had with the U.S. Navy as a civilian contractor, I was told it wasn't going to get renewed. So I was kind of faced with the crossroad, like, do I want to go back into corporate America knowing I'd have to go into an office every day, or do I want to try to do something else? And I took 2 days, 3 days to think about it. And that's when the training business kind of popped up, and I took the job as a high school coach as well. So I kind of knew that was the career path I wanted to go down. And I took a leap of faith, and, you know, I guess I'm still falling. So we'll see.
I know it's something you and I talk about, but I appreciate you were under different contracts with the engineering, but you've got benefits, you've got a lot of security, you've got a top degree, and then you call your mom and you say, I'm kind of giving this all up to become a soccer coach and walk around in Adidas all the time? And I know that was not an easy conversation, right?
No, it's still not an easy conversation. Almost 2 years removed. Obviously there's a lot of security there. There's a lot of, whatever it is to say you're an engineer and that you do engineering stuff. But I just kind of realized like I wasn't happy. I wasn't truly happy, like just with life. And I realized like I wanted to be an engineer. I don't regret that. But then I became one at 22, and I was like, so is this it? Am I doing this now until I retire? So I knew there was something more with it. Telling my mom that I wanted to leave was difficult. She still will bring up, maybe getting back into engineering part time or doing other things, but I think for me personally, it hasn't been until this last month or two, 3 months, where I've like really felt confident in who I am and the decision that I made, knowing that I made the right decision and I'm enjoying every day, enjoying life. And most people don't get to say they can do that.
So I want to talk to you a little bit later about sort of mentorship, formal and informal, the Black Coaches Advocacy Group, what that's done for you and some other people you've leaned on, formally or informal. And I certainly want to talk about your business, No Stress Midwest. But before we get there, one of the most important things for me in this conversation is how you have, as a high school coach, have made the effort to collaborate with the club coaches, as opposed to sometimes the more typical tension between club and high school. So what have you done with your high school program to really reach out to the club environment?
Yeah. So when I was an assistant coach, I was coaching club on the side, and I remember every time we'd get our high school kids back in the club's realm, the running joke was, okay, now we've got to reteach them soccer again, as a jab at the high school game for, playing kickball, which, at a lot of schools, that's pretty true. But then being in the high school realm, I also knew that there were coaches that tried to do it, but let's be honest, most high school coaches are teachers, right? So there was this, I think, ego as club coaches were like, oh, I'm not going to reach out to a high school coach because they don't know soccer like the way I do. Or the high school coach isn't going to reach out to the club coach because he doesn't maybe want to feel like he's inferior, being judged by someone who, quote unquote, knows their stuff. But being in both realms, I realized that club coaches that didn't know stuff, just like there are high school coaches that did it, and vice versa. So when I became a head coach, that was something that I knew I wanted to fix, and I didn't quite know how. So I went to my very first United Soccer Coaches Convention, and I received one of the diplomas I got was in the National High School Professional Certificate. And in there, one of the courses someone mentioned with building a community, reaching out as a high school coach to the club coaches and inviting them out to games or practices, or just reaching out to them. So I wrote that down in one of my notebooks, and then I reached out to you, Ian, and we met up for coffee, which kind of started everything. And you mentioned that same thing, so I knew that I had it written down twice. I saw it right there, and I was like, okay, this is something that I need to do. So later that day, we had a game that was a away game, pretty far trip. And I typed up a message to send to all of my high school kids' club coaches. I told all of them to write down their club coach's name, email, phone number, and I sent them an email. And it was pretty general, but then I had at least 2 paragraphs where I specifically spoke about the player. Sorry about that. Where I specifically spoke about the player, and oh my gosh, specifically spoke about the player and their contributions, and invited them out. Here are some big games we have upcoming. Our training schedule is this. The kids ladies would love if you came to a training. And out of all those coaches, only 3 or 4 responded. One of them luckily coached like 6 girls on our team, Vlad, with Puma, and he came out and he was a rock star at that practice. And because of that, I mean, Vlad and I are very, very good friends still. And I've become very good friends with a lot of the coaches at the club as well. And it just kind of built that relationship where now he can talk to me about players that go there. I can have players that reach out to me that are interested in playing for different clubs or different coaches. And I think that if player development is what we're here for as coaches, then it only makes sense and it's only right that the people that coach them are all in conversation and communication with each other.
Yeah, I like when you were talking about getting the first high school job by reaching out to 20 schools and only 2 or 3 responded. At least, and credit to the one that responded and said respectfully, we don't have a position, so good for them. But also, you reached out to a lot of high schools and clubs. Excuse me, you said 3 or 4 responded. But you tend to celebrate the people that do respond, even if it's a minority, and work with them and find good energy in that. So I really respect that and appreciate that in what you do. Now you got the cover of Soccer Journal, right? Because you had the coach, the club coach, Vlad, came out to your training, right?
Yeah, and that was awesome. I mean, that was the first like magazine I was ever on the cover of. And I remember like sending it to my mom, and I was like, "Mom, I never would have been on the cover of an engineering magazine." So that was really cool, and yeah, we got to speak about. I did a podcast with United Soccer Coaches with you, Ian and Dean, and that went over really well, and from that there was a lot of, I guess, a lot of people that are still wanting to know more about it. So they turned it into an article that was in the journal, and that, I mean, I still have that journal on my desk. It was just cool, and going to convention, it was weird that like some people recognized me from that, and that was really weird.
So Vince has got a couple of questions for you here from the guests. Just so you know, Julio Serrano's on, your man Carl's on, Nicole is on. We got a really good audience this morning, so your celebrity continues. But Vince, you got a question from Eugene?
Yeah. By the way, good crowd. We need to have you on every day. So, yeah, Gene from Chattanooga, Tennessee, asked the question: do you think there's value playing with your classmates in the high school environment?
Yeah, I 100%. You know, I think that playing for your high school, to me, you're playing in front of fans, right? When you go to a club game, it's only parents, if that. Now, granted, I'm not saying at our high school games our stands are packed every game, but for our boys' season in the fall, we play our rivals very first game of the season, and we have 3,000 people there, 3,000 kids that are there. I mean, it is the coolest experience I've ever been a part of. And I think that you do miss that by only doing club, right? And obviously this can segue into that DA conversation a bit, which I'm not opposed to the DA. That's another conversation. But I do think that playing with your high school friends and they become more than just your friends that you go to school with. Now they're your brothers that you spend. I mean, high school, we're together 5 days a week, maybe 6 for 3 months. So like you become more than just teammates at that point. And I think that that's really, really special part of the game is being able to build that family and the camaraderie within everybody.
And you coach the boys and the girls, right?
Correct. Yeah. Boys are in the fall, girls are in the spring.
So we've got a really good audience. We've got questions. I'm going to have Vince. I think Julio's got one for sure. And then I want to come back, briefly talk about mentorship, and then briefly talk about your business interest in individual training or personal training. And then we'll wrap it. So Vince, you got a question?
Yeah, from Julio. Brian, he just asks, do you think is high school soccer a potential solution for the pay-to-play model?
Ooh.
Tough one. You can put that. Yeah.
That's a good question. I don't know. I think that I think that there is benefits to playing high school. I I also think that there are benefits that if you can get paid to go into an academy and make it that way, you that's a huge benefit as well. I think that we're depending on the club that you're involved with, and I don't there's a lot of things that are involved with that. But I do think that the one or the other is not necessarily good or bad. I think it's all based on that person and their experience and what they're going through. I know kids that are playing academy and they want to go pro, but the second team, right, the USL team isn't going to sign them yet. So they're holding off on that, trying to maybe take a year off and do that, where there's someone that has college scholarship offers, where of course a DA isn't going, or a youth academy isn't going to tell their kid to go to college if they're good enough to play for them. So I think a lot of it is it's just dependent on the situation and that person.
So there's a question here from Nicole, and Nicole's sort of representing the entire Black Soccer Coaches Advocacy Group, but it's a little bit about the prep for college. I'll kind of take that one because I want to move things along, and then we'll come back to all the questions at the end. There's no doubt in my mind, as a college coach, I wanted the players to be playing in the best environment developmentally they could. But one of those environments was indeed high school, where they're dealing with adversity, they're dealing with fans, like you say. There is that band of brothers and sisters in the environment, on the bus and things, which sometimes doesn't involve the club environment. So even if the club environment has better players and maybe better technical training, and that's an if for sure, there are things that the high school environment creates, for better or worse, which I don't think can be replicated in the club environment. And so for me, it's part of that college prep. So forgive me, Nicole, speeding through that one, and we'll come back if we got time, because the audience is staying with us. So thank you. So Bryan, you and I met when you were with Nathan Hunt, who was the state director for Kansas at the time, and he got you an ODP. I know you speak to Mike Curry a lot. You come and see me a couple of times a month with your little blue book. So you're very comfortable reaching out and chatting and connecting with people. But talk a little bit about mentorship, or what it is for you to pull on these other resources, be they more experienced people or be they your colleagues. How do you go about that?
Yeah. Well, I think you kind of touched on it earlier when it came to like reaching out to those high school coaches and looking for the yeses instead of the nos. I look at life as, you're going to get rejected a lot, but all it takes is one yes to change things. And to me, if someone says no, I look at it as I'm in the same position that I was in before I asked. So I'm not really worse off with it, but now I can check that off my list. So when it comes to reaching out to people for mentorship, it's just like a conversation. You're a human being, just like Michael is a human being, just like Nathan is a human being, just like I am. And I know that if I come at you, or if I come to you in a way that is not professional in the realm where you will look at me in that way, then I'm not going to get that respect from you. But I also make sure, and I didn't just like reach out to you when I first started coaching, right, and swing for that fence there. I made sure that I had my stuff together. Whereas if I talk to you, you would look at me and say, okay, this is someone that at least knows what he wants to do, or is on the right path with things. Same with, Nathan saw me. I met Nathan when I was a lot younger in my coaching career. And I remember when he first brought me on to ODP, very first training session, I showed up like 10 minutes before it kicked off, and they told us to get there 45 minutes. And he picks me up in a cart and just looked at me and was like, "What are you doing?" And I had never felt so not ashamed, but like I let him down. And I was just like, okay, never again, never am I going to do this again. And so I look at it as I make sure that I'm prepared and I have my stuff together, but I have a purpose to what I'm reaching out to you for. I'm not just going to say, hey, Ian, you look like someone that can help me out. What do you say we have a chat and we can figure out how you can help me out? No, it's I'm looking at it. I'm looking for advice. I'm looking for mentorship. I'm looking for your opinion on things. You've done stuff that I want to do. You've been places that I want to go to. So who else would be better to ask than someone that's done all of that and get that firsthand experience instead of reading it on a website or hearing it from someone else who heard it from somebody else.
Yeah, one thing I would give you credit for that you do well is when you and I meet, for example, you typically have prepared a little bit in advance. There's things you want to report back on, and there's things that you've got set up. That does help the process, because when you're calling on somebody like Mike Curry, who's a busy guy, he doesn't want to start from scratch. It's nice if you can build. Vince, I see you popped up again. I want to get to the business part as my last piece. So go ahead, Vince.
Quick question. So from JM, he said you talked about not regretting the transition from engineering to coaching. Are there things that you have applied from your engineering job into your field now of coaching?
Oh, 1 billion%. I mean, it's crazy. And I've talked to Ian about that. Being in corporate America, I don't regret being in there because I learned a ton. I learned how to properly send emails to CEOs. I learned how to map out my day. I also learned that I don't have to be somewhere for 8 hours and be productive. But I also know that when it comes to running my business and starting it, there's stuff that being an engineer and being an OCD freak comes out in ways that I know most people that, that aren't wired that way would do. So it's a ton. And even when I'm now hiring people for my business, it's creating a job rec, which is from corporate America. When I did recruiting, I know how to recruit people because I did that as an engineer. And I treat all of my associates, Kyle, who's on the call, shout outs to him. But I mean, he can probably give you firsthand experience on how annoying I can get with sending him an email at 6 a.m. Hey, I need you to update your time thing. Hey, what's up with this? Hey, I need, and I know that it's not necessarily the easiest, but I know that corporate America is successful. Those people created a business and it's going. And more importantly, they've created this business where people want to work for you. So you can't discredit it. You just have to, for me, I take the pros from it and then I take the cons from it. And then now with my business, I create something that I think is a hybrid and it works for me.
Yeah, it's interesting because part of my response, JM, would be I'm really interested in leadership in the environment, the team environment. And most of the best research on leadership comes from the corporate world, right? We apply it in sports, but corporations spend tons of money in R&D on leadership study. So let's steal a little bit of that and put it in soccer. So Bryan, yeah. we're over time, but that's good because we still got the audience. People can reach you by email. They can reach you through Vince and I, and I'm sure we'll probably try and get you back on if we're going to be here for a while longer. But before we go, No Stress Midwest, right? It's there's a bigger plan. We won't get into the bigger plan, but it's a training program. And right now, you've got a little bit of business on individual training where you're going to kids' homes and the parents are supporting that. So just tell us a little bit about that personal training model.
Yeah. So I started No Stress Midwest when I left corporate America, and I was doing personal training a little bit on the side. But once I left, I needed something to pay the bills, and an engineering salary to high school coach's salary is quite the drastic change. So I started this business with about 7 kids. We've now grown over 100 kids. And during this time, I was worried because the fields where I normally train are closed, and looking at how coronavirus and COVID was going to be affecting things, I had to sit there and figure out, what am I going to do? And if it's one thing that this 2-year process of being an entrepreneur has taught me, it's to always look ahead and always figure out there's always a solution. You just got to spend the time to think about it. So as this was going on, I had the idea of kind of doing house sessions and like, okay, maybe I can go to the backyards. Luckily, a lot of the kids who I work with, their houses have pretty nice sized yards in them, so there's space. Ian, I brought it to him, and Ian mentioned doing it in the front yard, so then that way people driving by can see, and then if they have kids that want to train, they can reach out. So when COVID happened, I talked with Kyle and we put together a plan on how we were going to offer at-home sessions. We were also going to offer virtual sessions, but with all sessions, we were obviously going to practice our social distancing. Good thing with soccer training is you don't have to really come in contact with anyone to train them in that way. So the first 2 weeks that we went into this, I had 4 clients each week. And then, as things started to turn, last 2 weeks, Kyle and I have hit close to 20 clients total. And it's been really good just for our business, because we're now able to incorporate new ways of training, because now I'm having to look at the same activities that I was running and figure out how are ways I can not get as close, or what are ways that I can now use cones to emulate movement or to try to add restrictions to the players. There's one where I have a bunch of cones scattered around. Me being in that arena, still keeping my 6 feet distance, I'm able to offer shadow or jockey defending. So not only are they having to avoid me, but now they're having to avoid the cones that are in front of them as well. So it's just adding another level to that exercise or activity to make it a little more difficult for the player. But yeah, so we're doing that now, and business has been good with that. Kyle's been killing it as well. Today's his birthday too, so happy birthday, bro. But yeah. I can't hear you, Ian.
Uh-oh.
There you go.
We can't hear you.
We had somebody mowing the lawn outside. So
Okay.
I live in a neighborhood where people outsource their gardening. Anyway, so I'm interested in your story because of the engineering to soccer, the high school, the engagement of the club, mentorship with Mike Curry, Black Soccer Coaches Advocacy, and now the training business. And you've tapped into a business where there's mums and dads who want to see their kids stay active. Mm-hmm. So I think the whole package is interesting, and it's clearly interesting to our audience. So I appreciate your time. I know we're doing coffee probably next week, walk around the park, right?
Yeah. I was waiting till after this to ask you
to schedule me. Yeah. All right. So, Vince, over to you to wrap.
No, Bryan, again, thank you very much for your time. Great participation. Lots of shout outs to you for everything you do. So thank you so much for taking your time to join us. This afternoon, we got Kirk Nelson. Missouri State University women's coach. And he's going to be talking about his training method that he does with his Missouri State players. It's really interesting. So if you want some soccer content, it should be a good show. So thank you again, Bryan. God bless. Thank you, everybody on the other end. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, guys.
Bye, guys.